Live at the conclusion of Ohio State's first loss of the season. This one was a close one, a 32-31 loss to Oregon. And guys, this loss stings.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a postcast after a loss. This stuff sucks. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And this postcast is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. And when you do, you'll get $200 in bonus bets free. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. This loss stings. It sucks. It was avoidable because Ohio State made blunders and had issues all game long. You look at the final box score, you'll see some things. But when we watched this game, it was kind of like earlier when sometimes our words are hard to come out and we stumble over things. Ohio State in this game had some issues. They were stumbling over some things. They were making boneheaded decisions. And the ultimate outcome is a loss. We knew going into this game, one thing was for certain. The winner of the rushing battle would win this game. Regardless of Will Howard, regardless of Dylan Gabriel, regardless of anything else, the winner of the rushing battle wins this game. And now at the end of the day, yes, Will Howard's performance is going to get talked about. Dylan Gabriel's performance is going to be talked about. But at the end of the day, Oregon did more than Ohio State did on the ground. And I'm opening up with this on purpose because Ohio State, at times throughout this game, decided to still do the outside swing pass stuff, still do the screen stuff, still do the stuff offensively that is side to side. When you know in games like this, establishing the run makes things easier for everybody on the offense. Well, Oregon did that a whole lot better than Ohio State did. They also had some things throughout the air that other teams were not able to do. But this is one of those losses when you have 2 versus 3. And Ohio State has played the way that they did to start this game, start the season. You would expect the Buckeyes to come in here with a better game plan, to come out, make the trip out west in a way that they're more prepared to play, and also make the proper adjustments. Now, throughout this postcast, we're going to talk about things that happened first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. But ultimately, in this game, Ohio State had opportunities to take advantage of some mistakes that Oregon made. Didn't do it. Ohio State had opportunities to make the proper coaching adjustments. Didn't do it. Ohio State had the opportunity to do a lot of things in this game to prove to everybody, including us, to prove to everybody that they are worthy of being one of the best teams in the land. And what did we find today? Ohio State did not do the necessary things, make the necessary adjustments, make sure that there's no doubt that they're one of the best teams in the land. Yes, they are still one of the best teams in the land to some. Oregon's new to the conference. Oregon Stadium is probably, no, it's not the smallest in the conference, but it's one of the smaller ones in the conference. So Oregon is just new to Big Ten football. They played Big Ten football physicality, and Ohio State was playing catch a little bit, arm tackles here, corners on the outside of one-on-one situations, weren't making the right play, weren't making the right read, were simply getting beat at times, not always. Denzel Burke, I'm talking about you at this time, you were getting beat. There were just so many things that went wrong. There were some things that went right as well. Will Howard's performance today showed me a lot of things about him. And I said, hey, he is good enough to win this game. Even with the late abnormal clock management situation where there was a timeout that Ohio State had left on the field, Will Howard, even if that play where there were 12 men on the field and they decided to run and they didn't, I don't know if you're supposed to go back to the beginning where the clock was before the play or go where the flag was thrown. I'm not sure, but there was bad clock management. There were things all over the field. Oregon kind of gifted Ohio State some things, and Ohio State cannot take advantage of it. I think it's the biggest thought in this game. This is a heartbreaking loss, but also Ohio State did not take advantage of the opportunities right in front of them to win this game. You don't establish the run. You have some issues passing the ball because what? Oregon has a really, really good, fast defense. Defensively, I don't know if I've ever seen a defense like this at Ohio State play like this in a big-time matchup, and it still only be a 1-point loss. Because when you think about what Ohio State did in this game defensively, yeah, the numbers are one thing. Oregon almost had 500 yards of offense, so did Ohio State. Dylan Gabriel, 341 through the air, 68% completion percentage, 23 of 34, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. That's one thing. But it definitely seemed like Dylan Gabriel was in more control at times. He was making the right plays, making the right reads, and taking advantage of Ohio State's defensive errors. But also the coaches at Oregon were doing a lot of great things too. I mean, my mind, if you can tell, is all over the place right now because on Friday's show, on Thursday's show, I predicted Ohio State to win the game. Many of you know in the preseason, I predicted Ohio State to lose the game. But I didn't expect the trenches to be this way today. Didn't expect Oregon. I knew Oregon was good, but they played better than I thought they were going to. Ohio State defensively, 0 sacks. I believe it's 2 tackles for loss. You're not going to win big-time games if that is the outcome on the stat sheet. Now, tackles for loss aren't always something you look at in bad situations. Ohio State wasn't in the backfield a lot. A linebacker play has to get better. I know what the stats say at the end of the day. Cody Simon, Sonny Styles, and the numbers that they said. Trust me, linebacker play has to get better. And Oregon took advantage of Ohio State's issues. I don't like it. You don't like it. Nobody likes it. And for Ryan Day, when I said that Dan Lanning needs its win more than Ryan Day does, the only team I think Ryan Day has lost to back-to-back times during his tenure was Michigan. Now Oregon's in that situation too. And in the first half, beginning of the third quarter, I am looking to see, do we get that Georgia Ryan Day? That aggressive nature from Ryan Day? Do we get that version of Ryan Day? Or is it the guy that we've seen? There are portions of his career that's moving back and forth calmly, not really showing the extreme emotion that you think he wants to, that we think he should provide. Sometimes throughout this game, Ryan Day seemed a little bit too calm, a little bit too composed, a little bit too reserved. That's the word I was thinking about. A little bit of that. When in this kind of game, you expect Ryan Day, you expect the other coaches to go all out, to show everybody that, hey, we're going to do everything we need to do, aggression to win this game. Yes, the 12-team playoff is a thing, and yes, Ohio State can realistically still make the playoff. Yes, Ohio State can realistically still make the Big Ten championship. I don't want to look into the future. The here and now on this Saturday night was Ohio State had opportunities to win this game. Ohio State had opportunities to make adjustments to stop Oregon's offense that at times seemed like they were just moving down the field. Now, Ohio State at times it looked like they were just moving down the field as well because they were. But in the first time Ohio State played a 4-quarter game, they lost. That's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. I don't care if it's to the number 3 team in the land or a team that's not ranked. The first time you're forced to play 4 full quarters of football, you lose. That's not a good look. Not a good look for Ryan Day. Not a good look for the other coaches. As I mentioned, the other coaches and get more on track and more in line with the thoughts coming through our minds on the Saturday evening after the game. I think Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly have to answer a lot of questions because they didn't really help Ohio State with some of the calls they made tonight either. Ohio State lost to Oregon 32-31, and we're here to break it down together in this postcast on a Saturday night. This postcast is brought to you by our friends over at Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol procedures produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at checkout for 15% off. This podcast is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Y'all, that's so good. I got to say it again, especially before NFL Sunday. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All the action goes down on the FanDuel Sportsbook app and at FanDuel.com. Thank y'all for tuning into this postcast live on a Saturday night after Ohio State's heartbreaking loss to Oregon, a 32-31 loss on the West Coast. It was the first time that Ohio State and Oregon had played in Autzen Stadium, which set a record for attendance in that stadium with 60,129 people packed into that loud, raucous stadium on Saturday night. And on Saturday night, there were a lot of things I was thinking about. And as I put down some first half thoughts in my head, one of them was about one thing that Ohio State suffered in the first half. It was Josh Simmons going down and Tego Shabola going down. Ryan Day said after the game, unfortunately, Simmons might be out for the season. No official word on that, but it looks like he might be down for the year. And then Tego Shabola came back into the second half. Austin Sareveld replaced Shabola. Zen Mahalski replaced Josh Simmons in that spot. I didn't think you would find us flip a Fryer to left tackle and then Mahalski going to right tackle. I think you're probably going to keep Fryer where he is because I think it's just where he's best fit for this offensive line right now, and you bring in the backup. Well, that left side was a problem, y'all. I mean, Donovan Jackson in the first half had some issues. Simmons and Jackson had some communication issues on pass pro, which led to a bad play for Ohio State. But once again, on the left side, now keep in mind, this is also due to an injury where Mahalski and Jackson don't play a lot. Oh, yeah. In situations like when you're playing in loud environments, there might be O-line issues, there might be communication issues. And Ohio State had those a lot of the time throughout the game, communication issues, even down to the latter part of the game. Ohio State's a veteran team. Ohio State has a lot of guys that'll be future NFL players. Jeremiah Smith is good. Had a game numerically and statistically that was not a bad game. He had 9 catches, 100 yards. He had a touchdown as well. He had a couple drops, which dropped his completion percentage down, or more than a couple drops. Completion percentage down to, I believe, 69%. It's coming from the website that puts out stats during the game. He was targeted 13 times. And so when I think about Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Buka, those were the 2 receivers. One thing I think should have happened more offensively that was more of a self-inflicted wound because Ohio State has a talent to do it a whole lot more. Get G. Scott Jr. more involved in the pass game or call out for Carnell Tate, number 17. Because G. Scott Jr. was getting open quite a bit throughout the game. And if you look out there, and there was a play here in the slant in the second half, homie beat the defender off the line of scrimmage. And it reminded me about him being a former wide receiver and having the quick feet at the line of scrimmage that a receiver has, which allows him to play a little slot, be split out wide. And he's not a tight end with slow feet. He's not a tight end that's not good in space. He is a bigger body player than he was when he came to Ohio State, playing a tight end. He's starting for the Buckeyes, which means he's a decent blocker as well. And what do you find about G. Scott Jr. on a Saturday night in Autzen Stadium? He was doing a lot of things good. Why wasn't he getting more balls? Now, part of that may be Will Howard, but a lot of it has to go to Chip Kelly as well. Because if you got a guy rolling like that, feed him. Yeah, those of you that follow me on Twitter at jsteven07, you will see me throughout the games. Hey, feed Q, feed Trey. Give the guy in the backfield that's hot. Give him the ball. Why in the world do you not give a guy who Oregon clearly is having trouble guarding? Why don't you give him the ball more? Because if I am thinking this, a lot of you might be thinking that as well. Here's something else that Ohio State has in their back pocket that they don't use a lot. Patrick Gerd, number 49, is a guy right now that could play that Mitch Rossi role from a couple years ago. Many of you remember Mitch Rossi was more of an H-back or a fullback, and Ryan Day loved it. Talk about 12 personnel. Hey, give me your tight end. Give me an H-back that can motion back into the backfield and be a fullback. That bigger body guy that's a little bit more shorter, 6'1", 6'2", maybe 230, 235, 240, but can be that great lead blocker. Put him in. Somebody answer this for me, because I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I kind of realized that when Patrick Gerd was in on Saturday night in that T formation or full house backfield, he was a great lead blocker. Somebody tell me, when you're struggling to run the ball and you're a running back, what is great? Hey, give me a fullback, run an HBI, or give me something outside with a lead blocker to help open the hole for me. Why is it Chip Kelly comes in and he's a great offensive mind? I'm not saying that he's not, but why in the world all of a sudden, when you're struggling to run the ball, do you not try to find a way to establish a run with number 49, Patrick Gerd? Because I think he is a guy that can get the job done. But what do we find? Oh, some coaches, I say it on the show all the time, some coaches, they're just not made for the big time lights, and I think Chip Kelly is. Some coaches, they fold under pressure. And I'm not saying Chip Kelly does that a lot, but tonight it definitely seemed like there were times when you're folded. Got to give credit to where credit is due. Oregon's defense is good, man. That's an elite group of players that Dan Lanning has put together over there in Eugene. Can't knock it, can't say it's not. Without their best defender at Jordan Burch, which on Thursday he was carted off the field in practice on a Thursday night, many people were speculating if he would not play Pete Thamel on game day on Saturday morning. Ended up saying, "Hey, here's the status of Jordan Burch and where he currently stands." He's listed all that and said all that. That's great. That's cool. Why in the world, when you go into the game, you know he's not going to be there, you take advantage of it a little bit, but you find that something is rolling, something is working? Why don't you roll? And I think Patrick Gerd only played 2 plays. They're both in goal line, both out of the T formation. It works. And I'm not saying Gerd only has to come in during the T formation, but what I am saying is this. If you find something even in short yardage situations that works, short yardage in goal line, that can still happen. And at the 50-yard line, the 40-yard line, that can still happen there. So one thing that confuses me is Ohio State has Cardinal Tate. They got number 88 and G. Scott Jr. They both did some good things tonight. You also have Patrick Gerd, who's an offensive weapon that rarely gets used. Why? I'm just knocked over my bottle on my computer, on my desk here, because I'm very frustrated. This is a game where Ohio State had the dudes to win. Sometimes there are coaching blunders. Sometimes there are issues like with Denzel Burke on the outside, who was getting cooked, man. Burke was getting cooked. And as many of you know, I don't normally rip Denzel Burke. There's normally not a reason to. But Oregon picked on him. Normally, Igbenoghen's the guy that gets picked on. But tonight, Dylan Gabriel said, "Oh, no. We got that fast guy on the outside. Let's pick on number 10. And number 10 showed on an island. He ain't that dude tonight. I'm not saying it'll be like that when Ohio State returns to the field after the bye week. But on this Saturday evening on October 12th, over there in prime time on NBC, Denzel Burke was not that dude. He did not rise to the occasion. Tackling up high, bad situations, getting beat mid-route. Come on, man. You're better than that. But hey, on the big-time stage, at least on this big-time stage, Denzel Burke wasn't able to overcome what Oregon threw at him. We're going to continue this thought about self-inflicted wounds and some coaching errors and kind of wrap it up with one thought. A lot of this stuff we saw tonight, it can't happen again. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. This postcast is one of those shows that is abnormal because Ohio State doesn't normally lose. And if they lose, it's against really good teams. And sometimes in losses, Ohio State has the guys that can overcome a lot of the things that happen on the field. In the first half, Oregon botched a PAT, ended up being a thrown ball like a hook shot in basketball, thrown by the holder who was not your normal holder. He throws a little hook shot type pass. It was intercepted by Lathan Ransom, and he ran it up the sidelines, ended up getting tackled. It would have been a great 2 points for Ohio State to win. If everything goes the same way and Ohio State is up 2, hey, they win the game. You also have, I believe, a missed field goal by Oregon. What is that? That could have been 4 points that Oregon had, but they didn't have them. You have injuries at Ohio State. Now, this is not one that was a self-inflicted wound or a coaching error. This is just, well, if Oregon's guys don't get hurt and Ohio State's do, well, that's just something you have to deal with. And that's unfortunately something that happened. But Ohio State on defense, when was the last time you saw these guys play like this? When was the last time in a big-time game, a big-time stage, you didn't see Ohio State get any sacks? Only 2 tackles for loss. When was it ever at Ohio State that you've seen guys on defense allow running back in Jordan James, who's not one of the – he's a good back. Don't get me wrong. I think he has over 600 yards on the season, averaging 100 yards a game, had 115 on the ground, 5 yards a pop, and 1 touchdown tonight. But when was the last time Ohio State's team stopped a guy a week ago? That's one of the best backs in the country. Then the very next week against a back that's not as good, they do this? I don't know, man. I don't pick a lot on Jim Knowles. I'll let Jim Knowles slide a lot because your defense has been really, really good. And I've been trying my best to hype up the defense for what they have done this year. Aiden Childs makes a lot of mistakes, and Ohio State forced him to do what he normally does. Caleb Johnson normally runs all over everybody. Didn't run on Ohio State. Cool. Road test against Michigan State. Ohio State had some flops and some failures in the first half. All of a sudden, in the third quarter, they take it over. They have a score, a turnover forced, a score, another turnover forced, another score, another first forced turnover, and now Ohio State is in cruise control. Ohio State, even in this game, won the third quarter like we always talk about. Not said 2 reasons why I thought Ohio State was going to win this game. Winning the battle in the trenches like they've done all year, and I thought they were going to do it again against Oregon. Number 2, third quarter dominance. Ohio State didn't give up a point in the third quarter. They scored 7. The one thing, though, defensively, yeah, the defense did good. They gave up 10 points in the second half versus the 22 that they gave up in the first half. So they did cut that in half, which is great. Did a lot of good things. However, they matched Oregon point for point in the second half. And when Oregon needed to make plays, I think the second half was when Dylan Gabriel scrambled around and got that touchdown run. They didn't get a stop. They had that 4th down stop. That's great. Did it. They ended up stopping the guy, Oregon, again on third and goal, forcing a short field goal, which was what I think ultimately put Oregon over the top. But Jim Knowles has to fix some stuff, man. You gotta fix it. If you realize your guys are not getting anything done with the four-man rush, why bring in a backup? I understand maybe changing things up is going to be a little bit better, but if your backups are a backup because they haven't earned the right to start or haven't earned the right to play on the field consistently, what makes you think they're going to come in against a team with really good tackles and a really good O-line and get things done then? I think it was early in the game on the first quarter, one of the drives Oregon scored on, I believe, a red zone touchdown. Hero Kanu came in. I like Hero Kanu. He's a good player. He is not the first. He should not be the first defensive tackle off the sideline. That's Caden McDonald. At one point throughout the game, I believe I saw Jason Moore on the field. Good player. But in this kind of game, why? There were times throughout this game where I saw Jack Sawyer off the field and some backups were were on the field. And I'm thinking to myself, Jack Sawyer's done a lot of good things. He got a lot of the pressures. Why are guys that should be on the field not on the field? Linebacker play, once again, is an issue. I know what the stat sheet says, but we all have said a lot of things this year with the linebacker play, and the linebacker play has not been up to par. If y'all can't tell, I'm a little bit more annoyed than normal on a Saturday night because this loss was not something. Yes, Oregon won the game. I'm not trying to do the whole conversation that you see on First Take It or on some sports talk radio shows. Hey, did Ohio State lose it or did Oregon win it? What was it? Was it more Ohio State's fault or was it more Ohio State could have won the game? I am not going to diminish Oregon's win. They won the game fair and square. They made the plays to win the game. At the same time, Ohio State's coaching sometimes is, I don't know, man. Was it a big-time environment? Was it the abnormal travel? Was it leaving on a Friday versus a Thursday? We saw a team leave on Thursday and win today going from coast to coast. I made a further trip than Ohio State did to Eugene, Oregon, and Penn State going from Happy Valley to Southern California and they beat USC in overtime. And that was a big-time win for James Franklin, who is leading a team right now that's undefeated and not only has the upper hand on Ohio State in the Big Ten standings, but also is sitting pretty nicely and might be undefeated when Ohio State comes to Happy Valley in a few weeks. And so there were some logistic things. There are some coaching things. But a lot of the stuff we're talking about tonight were things that Ohio State could fix. Hey, the rushing battle. It wasn't a large margin of victory for Oregon in this game. Oregon had 155 on the ground. Ohio State had 141. Oregon had 31 rushes. Ohio State had 33. So there wasn't like we're talking about a big margin about the rushing battle, but Ohio State should win the rushing battle. Keep in context that sometimes the rushing battle could have been won, even with the injuries, if your backs just run north and south, not east and west. If the coaches don't keep calling this east and west stuff and move more north and south like they did later in the game, and you saw the balls moving down the field, even more 10-play, 12-play drives, the ball's moving down the field, you're doing a lot of things great. Doing a lot of things correctly. And so a lot of the stuff we saw tonight with coaching errors, with guys being on the field that shouldn't be, with your mishaps with the guys that are Cardell Tate, G. Scott Jr., can't happen, man. You want to win big-time matchups on the road? You got to push the right buttons. You got to be as aggressive as you need to be. You have to. This is Ohio State. The block out on my hat that's on the jerseys, it means something. And what we saw tonight was Ohio State get beat fair and square. Ohio State did not make the proper adjustments, didn't make the proper calls, didn't push the proper buttons. They didn't do that all game long, and Oregon took advantage of it. So the one thing that can happen moving forward, I don't care if it's a big-time matchup or it's not. You can't miss calls. You can't push the improper button. You got to get some of this stuff right. It's unfortunate Simmons might be out for the year. It's unfortunate that at right guard, that is still going to be a battle moving forward. That's unfortunate. What's also unfortunate is Ohio State's 5-1. What's fortunate is the bye week's coming up. But also getting back on the field might be great for Ohio State too. I didn't really talk about many positives today, which is maybe self-explanatory. Here's a positive for you. Will Howard made some plays, man. Will Howard made some plays down the stretch, made some plays in this game. But when the game was on the line, the ball in his hand, clock management being a big issue for a lot of players and a lot of teams down the stretch, it was an issue for Will Howard. The internal clock, speed it up a couple seconds. Speed it up maybe 3 seconds. 6 seconds on the clock, you snap the ball, you scramble. You got to realize, hey, if I only get a 2-yard gain, get down with 3 seconds left, give my coach some time to call a timeout, that's great. But ultimately, what do we find? It was an issue. Clock management is an issue for some coaches. It was an issue for Will Howard in that day. And now we're talking about a game. Will Howard got positive yards on the final play of the game, but the clock ran out. And the clock ran out on Ohio State's chances to win this game. This is not your conventional postcast, but after losses around here at Ohio State, Locked on Buckeyes postcast is not normal. It's unconventional because losses are unconventional, especially this loss. 32-31 loss to Oregon. Ohio State had the good guys good enough to make plays. Ohio State had guys and had coaches that have won games like this before. But on this night in Autzen Stadium, Ohio State lost a heartbreaker. The Ducks fans flooded the field as I told my wife they would. Hey, if Oregon wins, and she understood, she knows ball. But I said, hey, man, Oregon, if they win, they're going to rush the field. Throw the rankings out the window. This is Oregon's welcome to the Big Ten moment. It came by the hands of Ohio State. Let that sink in. Ohio State allowed Oregon to have their welcome to the Big Ten moment when Ohio State was on the field, walking off the field with their heads down. It's got to be an unfortunate feeling. Got to be an uncomfortable feeling, but that's the feeling Ohio State has right now after their 32-31 heartbreaking loss to those pesky Ducks. Ducks win, Buckeyes lose. It's not fun. We'll be recapping this game and talking about the first half of Ohio State's season on Locked on Buckeyes on the upcoming week. Follow the Locked on Buckeyes podcast on the YouTube, on the Apple, on the Spotify, wherever you get your fine podcast. Follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. If you want to send an email, you can. Send it to jstevens317@gmail.com. Buckeye fans, thank you for everyone that tuned in live, that dropped a comment in the chat. I really appreciate it. And as always, we cover Ohio State here. Wins, losses, the good, the bad, the ugly. We do it all right here on Locked on Buckeyes every day. Because of the Locked on Podcast Network, we cover your team every day. Up out here on a Saturday night, Ohio State loses. This one sucks.